Continue. Chapter 49. Chapter 49 speaking about a different kind of love. Usually love is expansive. You want to embrace the other. It's an expansive feeling of the heart. And it's more about the person and their feeling of the other that they have love towards. And of course, it will express itself ultimately in doing for that person. Chesed, acts of kindness. The love we're talking about over here is one that actually impels the heart, meaning it's contracting it, making it smaller. Like a parent that loves their child and has been holding them because they're little, and now it's time for, out of love, to not hold them. Put them on the ground, let them walk on their own or start crawling on their own, whatever it is. And the child feels a distance, removed. But indeed, what is the fact? What is the reality? Is that you're making space for the child, reducing your space, so to speak, your feeling. So it's a contraction, holding back. That is, the love is compelling. So that's what God did for us. He created, He is infinite, and so to speak, the infinite is going to find their place with things that are similar to them, right? The infinite. But God puts that all aside. He's not interested in that. He's interested in us down here in a finite world, that we should have a relationship, a connection with God through the Torah mitzvahs that we do down here. This is what He wants. So what did God do? He put aside the divine agenda to make a human condition out of the love for us, to make us independent individuals that we can now serve Him and connect to Him. So what that should lead us to is to put aside our agenda, which is the human condition, which is human nature, human condition and human nature, put that aside in order to give back, to reciprocate that which He has done for us. And that's the metaphor that we used in chapter 46 of the king who takes the pauper out of the dunghill and brings him into the inner chamber. So here in the act of creation, God has put aside His agenda, or bad word, because God doesn't have an agenda. That's in the human condition. We have agendas. But put aside, so to speak, His nature, which is also, for lack of a better term, put aside His infinite condition, creates a finite condition for our sake. So if He can put aside for us, we need to be able to put aside for Him. That's to reciprocate. That's what we're talking about. So with this, the Alter Rebbe says, now we can understand, for those who are familiar with the prayer service in the morning, now we can understand in the morning, they're called Birchas HaShachar, the blessings, Birchas HaShema, the blessings of the Shema. We have the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, our Lord is one, which the purpose of that is to have an appreciation of the unity and the oneness of God in our lives, that it should bring us that we should love Him with all our heart, with both hearts, not just the godly soul, but with the animal soul too. Should also come to love God. But how are you going to come to that? How are you going to come to be able to have a unity of God, that the oneness that we sense of God is not just of my godly soul experiencing it, but it's even my animal soul that also has a love for God. So with that, we have the two blessings of the Shema that precede it. Now, the question is asked, we call it the blessings of the Shema, Birchas Kriya Shema. Blessing usually, like before you do a mitzvah, you do a blessing. But here are these blessings, seemingly, what do they have to do with the Shema? Shema is about the unity of God, the love of God. What's the connection? So what are the two paragraphs that precede the Shema? The first one is speaking about God as creator. God is creator. One second. Or that he is creator of the heavens above, this world down here, and that there are angels above, seraphim and oifanim, and all various kinds of heavenly beings that are completely nullified before God, connected and praising him out of the great sanctity of God, declaring Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy is God, right? And yet God is apart from them. He doesn't reveal himself to them. Remains sanctified, removed from them. Where does God reveal himself? As we continue and say, Molei kol haaretz kavod, that the whole earth is full of his glory, and particularly where it is in the community of Israel, the Jewish souls. The Jewish souls, and as they express themselves down here in this world through Torah and mitzvahs, this is where God is found. That's where his connection is. Even though these lofty beings are so dedicated, so aware, so connected to the divine, that's not where God puts himself. He puts that aside. And where is he found? Here. And then we continue with this in the second blessing, which is called Avas Olam, which means an eternal love that God has for us. And the word actually, eternal love, is, Avas Olam, Ahavtanu, Hashem Elokeinu, that with an eternal love you have loved us, God, Lord our God. Meaning that you've set aside everything that we spoke about previously in the previous blessing of the spiritual beings above, that they are not what you are interested in, but us. And not only that, it's an Avas Olam. Avas Olam also means a worldly love, meaning a love of a world that's limited, a world that this world is limited, a physical world that's limited. And where does that love come from? That's an expression of, as we explained previously, a love that impels the flesh, the metaphor. Impels the flesh, meaning it fetches it, it makes it smaller. Why is it making it smaller? To make space for us. That's what God did. He contracted upon himself, his infinite being, and even in the higher worlds, spiritual worlds, even though God's presence is very prominent there, he still contracts to make this world where it's not prominent, where it's not prevalent, where it's not obvious, where it's not revealed. Yet, he reveals that love towards us because of the act of making a world, making us separate, making us who we are, in order that we could connect to him. So that's what Ahavas Olam is. And why does he do it? For the sake of the Jewish people, to bring them close to the unity and the oneness through Torah and mitzvahs. And that is, as it continues in the blessing of Ahavas Olam, Chemla Gedela V'Yisera, exceedingly abounding compassion. So first there's the compelling of the love that God has for us that brings him to contract and to make a world, to make me. That now, out of his compassion for me, that he made me, in a sense, distant because of the contraction. There's a distance as a result of that, right? Again, just like the parent who distanced themselves from the child, motivated by love, but distanced from the child in order that the child can learn to walk. And yet, after that, say compassion. And what's that compassion? Compassion is that he wants to bring us close. And he brings us close. He gives us Torah mitzvahs so we could become close to him. And where is that closeness? Further expressed that he chooses us. This is the chosen people, as in the blessing of Vana B'chartem called V'loshen, that you have chosen us from all nations and tongues. As the Alter Rebbe explains, the choosing here is not of our spirituality, but of our physical reality, of our physical being. That's what he chooses. Choice is when there's an equality between things and you can choose. True choice is when you're not compelled. If you're compelled to choose, then that's not really a free choice. So the body of a Jew is equal to any other physical body of any other human. Yet God chooses that and imbues it with a certain holiness. By the way, that's why you can't cremate a body, a Jewish body. You can't tattoo a Jewish body because of the chosenness of the physical reality and the physical body of the Jew that this blessing tells us. So in other words, the compassion that God has and the relation which lead, compassion meaning, why do you have compassion of another? Because you have a relationship and you want to be close. So compassion brings that closeness. God, through the love that he has, it compels, that brings the tzimtzum, that causes me to be, right, and their physical world to be, but there's that distance. Now with the compassion, he wants to have the relationship bring us close to him. So he gives us Torah mitzvahs that are to be done, not in the spiritual, but in the physical. The physical act of putting on tefillin, the physical act of giving charity, the physical act of making a blessing on physical food. He didn't choose the spiritual nature that therefore will lead us out of this world. No. He wants the physical being that he chooses in this physical world that he creates, that out of the love that impels to contract upon his infinite being, that way we have a relationship with him in the Torah mitzvahs that we fulfill. This is what this blessing, the second blessing. And then we say that you brought us near. We give thanks. Thanks means over here that we abnegate ourselves. In other words, we are reciprocating, right? In other words, now bringing us to an awareness of what God is doing for us. We want to reciprocate back, and therefore we give thanks. We proclaim his oneness, the oneness, and that this is all leading to the Shema, that therefore we should now be able to come to the ahavta, to love, with all of your heart, with heart meaning both, vavcha, with both hearts. In other words, not just the heart of the godly soul, but the heart of the animal. It also comes to a love of God to such a degree that I'm ready to set aside my agenda for God. God set aside his agenda. Again, lack of a better word, God doesn't have an agenda. He set aside his nature, doesn't have a nature either. We're using human terms towards God because we have no choice. We're human. So he put aside for us, we should put aside for him. That's to reciprocate. The more removed we are, the more we recognize what God is doing for me, and therefore that gives me the capacity to put aside for him. If you think, you're very close and special, but if you understand now the distance for God to do that, and yet he does it for us, we need to reciprocate and do something for him. What is that? Everything. For his sake. As he does for our sake. Powerful idea. It's really something. And that's, by the way, in human condition, that's true love. True love is, what am I able to put aside for another? To embrace somebody, all love songs, think about it, in our Western culture, have nothing, almost nothing to do about putting myself aside for you, my beloved. It's all about me feeling that passion for you, the desire to connect to you, to have you in my life, It's all self-absorbed. Yesh mi she'ohev, because there is the lover who's loving. But for it to be real, we have to be able to impel the flesh, put aside me for my loved one. If we can do it for God, then we'll be able to do it in our human relations too. If we can't do it for God, then when it comes to human relations, it's going to be very tough, because why should I do it? I want to have the feeling. It's about me. As we've many times said, if we're just looking to feel good, so then, I want love, so it makes me feel good. But if we're looking to do good, so then I'll be able to put me aside out of love for the sake of my beloved. That's it, folks. Powerful stuff. Thank you for joining. Please share. Tonight, for those interested, there'll be a class on Lag BaOmer, even though Lag BaOmer was yesterday. Come and join us on Facebook, Chabad ZK or Chabad Zichron, or on Zoom. All right, folks. Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.